and welcome into the State of the Fan address in partnership with the Let's Go Devils podcast. I am Nick Villano here with the one, the only, Sam Wu. Sam, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Just priming up for the 2019 NHL draft. We got a mock draft tonight on the State of the Fan address, episode 7. Powered by Nova Product Design on the Primetime Radio Network. As you guys know, the fans out there, that this is the Let's Go Devils podcast platform. We formed a strategic alliance with our good friends at Pucks And Pitchforks, Nick Villano, which is powered by Fansided. I have to get all the plugs in there. But we're going to be talking Devils hockey, the Ray Shero interview with Greg Wyshynski of ESPN. I like that one. I don't have it in front of me right now, Nick, but maybe we should talk about that interview because, wow, that was pretty candid.
Ray Shero's got a potty mouth. I must say, he is a potty mouth.
Yeah, you know, actually, I've kind of know Ray behind the scenes just a little bit, and he doesn't hold back. The guy doesn't hold back, and he's actually a pretty funny guy. But he doesn't hold back. And if you want to talk about potty mouth, his stock amongst Devils fans, I think, just went up a couple notches, because that's how we do it in Jersey. You just let them know what you're thinking, and if you have to throw a couple F-bombs here and there, so be it. As long as it's in context, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be a New Jersey guy unless you had a couple certain 4-letter words in there at all times. And it's funny, he's talking to Greg Wyshynski, another New Jersey guy. You know, he's also a Devils fan, and you know, Ray Shero has done this before. Like he had a interview a couple months ago where they asked him if he was going to trade Taylor Hall at the trade deadline, and he said no bleeping way. So this is Ray Shero. But I gotta say, Sam, there's a lot more than just those curse words in this interview. There's a lot of very interesting things that I found.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now. I'm on ESPN.com. I'm trying to look at part of the business. Devils GM Ray Shero on Taylor Hall and the number 1 pick and more. This is by Greg Wyshynski. I was thinking of getting him on and actually see if he would come on, but then I realized the NHL Awards is going on. He's probably out there right now. So, but maybe we'll get him on in the future on the State of the Fan address. But yeah, so where do we start? Where should I start with, you know, or maybe you want to talk and you just tell me which line, and, you know, if you get to, you know, certain words, I got something for you, something ready for you.
Yeah. So it's the third question that he asked that really caught my eye, where he's asking about positional need and whether that has to kind of go into who he's picking first of all between Kaapo Kakko and Jack Hughes. And he made a very interesting, it's a short answer, but he said something very interesting in that answer. So we know Ray Shero, he's a workhorse. He has his staff looking up, you know, guys' birth records and things like that when he's going to draft a player. He's got everything from top to bottom. He knows about this player. Yet, when they asked him about positional need, he said, some people have said Kaapo has played center before. Some people have said that. He hasn't seen it. He's relying on the word of other people. Yet when he got the very next few words is, well, Jack Hughes has played wing before at the World Championships. He knows that for a fact. He's seen that. So he's listening to other people on Kaapo Kakko, but he knows Jack Hughes. He knows Jack Hughes top to bottom. So I feel like he kind of let the cat out of the bag. I mean, we kind of figured he was going to take Jack Hughes anyway, but he was trying to keep it close to the vest. He's saying a bunch of things that make us think that both guys are still on the table. But I think that right there shows that he's done his homework on Jack Hughes, and he's listened on Kaapo Kakko, but he himself is not. He's not all in on Kakko like he's all in on Jack Hughes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was a little surprised with which turned out so far, I think, a right decision. Him picking Nico Hischier. If you remember in that draft, Hischier's stock was rising rapidly months leading up to the draft. And you're thinking, okay, North American player, Nolan Patrick, he's the guy. And then probably in that last month, we really didn't know. And when he picked Hischier, it was kind of like, okay, all right, we in Ray we trust. And he's turning out to be a very, very good, solid player down the middle. But you can't really go wrong with either guy. I mean, can you imagine if the Devils stun the hockey world and draft Kakko, and what that first line would be? Hischier, Hall, and Kakko. line one. The guy, Kakko, he's very strong with the puck. It's quite evident. He's NHL ready, but you're betting with Jack Hughes the untapped potential we don't even know yet. And it's just a matter of philosophy. And basically, if you have the first overall pick, it doesn't matter what position or what needs you have or what is the stage of your where your team is at. You pick the best available player with the highest upside. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, you kind of have to take those two things into account, like who's closest to making the NHL. When are you going to get control over from the quickest? Because a lot of these players that you take after the first 5 overall are going to go to another league, whether it's the WHL, whether it's the SHL over in Sweden, whether it's the KHL in Russia, or it's the OHL. They're going to go to leagues where you don't have control over their development. Other people are in control of their development. So, this is a separate case where whoever you pick is going to be the guy. He's coming right into New Jersey. He's wearing that NJ on his crest. He's immediately going to be under your control, and his development is 100% on you. So I think that's where you look at the upside, and the upside goes further. And I agree with you. I think that Kaapo Kakko is more quote-unquote NHL ready than Jack Hughes, but Jack Hughes is also NHL ready. He's going to play in the NHL next year, as will Kakko, and they're both going to be good players next year. They're going to be, players that I bet you they both get more points than Kevin Hayes next year. So I think that I think that you do have to go with the one with the highest upside. I think that Kakko has a higher floor. I think the worst version of Kakko is better than the worst version of Hughes, but I think the version of Hughes we expect is better than the version of Kakko we expect in their primes. But we could talk about that more when we talk about the draft. I want to get back to this interview with Shero, because he's also talked about one Taylor Hall. They had to. He knew he was going to get this question, even though this interview is mostly about picking number 1 in the draft. Taylor Hall has been in the news the past couple of weeks, and people have mistakenly said that he wants out, and other people have said that he's looking towards free agency, even though he hasn't said any of those things. So he's said a couple of these things before. When he came out and responded to the report by the Fourth Period that came out, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago now. And Greg straight up asked him, Taylor's 1 year from free agency, and he asked him how frustrated it is to see everybody talking about this 1 year out. We're not even at July 1st yet. He's not even allowed to sign a contract extension at this point. So he was asking how frustrated it is, and he's like, it's not frustrating. He's business. Ray Shero is business. You got to remember, when he first came here, he sent the 3rd round pick to Pittsburgh to bring his boy Bo Bennett here and to give him a shot with New Jersey. And then he gave him 1 year and then cut bait. he was a restricted free agent. He could have kept him, he couldn't go anywhere else, and he just let him. He was like, gone. He's business. He's only business. So we understand that this is part of the business. Part of the business is people are going to talk about your guy, especially when you have a former MVP. But again, he's like, I've heard nothing different from Taylor or Darren Ferris. Darren Ferris is Taylor Hall's agent. And then he kind of went into a couple interesting things where he talked about Taylor missing half the season last year. And he hasn't really talked to him at all. He hasn't talked to him. He said that they've never talked about money. Money hasn't even come up in any of their conversations. It's just about team building, where he thinks that Hall is going to fit on this team, where he thinks that what he wants from Hall. He says he's going to talk to Hall again this week. So I believe he said this week. But either way, he's going to talk to Hall, within the next 2 weeks. The thing that I think gets a little overplayed on Taylor Hall is that he really does every single time before that end of the year interview. He said nothing but amazing things about coming to New Jersey. And you got to think about going back to that dinner that he had with Ray Shero after his first year here, where Ray Shero said, do you want me to trade you? And Taylor was kind of taken aback by that. And, that's where they kind of hashed out all these things. And then the next year, Taylor Hall was the MVP of the league. So clearly, I don't want to say that he owes the Devils anything, because he doesn't. But, he's got to have that feeling that, the Devils brought me in. They were patient with me. And then look what I've turned into. So I think most of this is just a kick in the pants more than a threat or, him looking towards free agency.
Yeah. I like the question from I guess it's ESPN, but it's really Greg. When do you think you're going to talk money with him? Right? Let me read what Shero said. After we sit down, I don't want to talk money until we talk about where we are as a franchise and what's on his mind. The money part is secondary to that. Hopefully, we'll have something to talk about and go from there. Everyone's like, what about the money? What about the money? They're like that with offer sheets too. Well, a guy has to actually sign the I try to get that in there.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I love it. I love it. I love it. He's just he knows his stuff and he just puts it out there. He's like, yeah, it's just like offer sheets.
Listen, I mean, Ray Shero talking to the media can get a guy to run through a brick wall that's on fire. Like he knows how to control the narrative. He knows exactly what to say, and not in a way that Lou did, because Lou just wouldn't tell you anything, and that's how he controlled the narrative. Ray is like the 2019 version of that, where he knows he has to have a narrative. The narrative has to exist, but he's going to put it out there in a way where, these Devils fans were rabid against Ray 2 days ago because, the Rangers went and traded for Jacob Trouba, and, it was a rough day on Twitter for Ray Shero. I don't even know if he looks at it, but if he did, the comments were not very nice to him, and people were very upset that we're watching the Rangers and the Flyers make moves, and Ray Shero has not made any. Yet, all I've heard about today is this interview and how great this interview was and how funny Ray Shero is and how great it is we have a guy that curses and, things like that. And, like that, the narrative is switched. So, you got to hand it to Ray Shero.
Well, Nick, I just want to go into some of our chat rooms. We're all over the place. You can find us on Facebook at Let's Go Devils Podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Periscope, at Let's Go Devils Pod, and on our YouTube channel, Let's Go Devils. In the YouTube channel, your boy, Jersey Joe Stanzalo, right? So I was high on Nico Hischier, especially since he was playing very well in the QM JHL. At that time, it was all about Nolan Patrick. And then just towards the end there, the last 4 months, he sure snuck in as the first overall pick and turned out to be a great decision. And also in response to my the other side of the argument for Kako, Shane Van Sickle writes, "Don't go top heavy, pick used." That seems to be the consensus from some Devils fans. And also we want to welcome in those are on Facebook Live as well. We see a lot of people watching, a lot of people. Hi, Cheryl. She said hello. But yeah, if you guys want to chime in in the chat below, and we will try to get to your comments and questions as well. This is a State of the Fan address with Nick Villano and Sam Wu. So let's try to go through more of this interview, Nick. What else did something stand out in this interview with Greg Wyshynski with ESPN.com?
He talked about a couple of things. He talked about, there was a couple of the one question he asked is whether, Ray Shero has a lot of ties to Team USA, and whether Team USA is if that skews who he's drafting or who he's scouting. It doesn't have to be who he's drafted, but who he's looking at. And then he rightly pointed out, he's like, what? Because I'm American, I'm going to pick just the Americans. He's like, no, I wouldn't be good at my job if I did that. And then he points out that both of his parents are from Canada. He's like, so are you saying if I was born there where my parents are from, I'd, be prompt to Canadians? He's like, no. He's like, obviously I picked Nico over Nolan, and Nolan was the American. Nico is the, Swiss. So, he didn't do it there. But the one part that, I think is worth discussing is it's kind of, the Devils signed these two guys, Matt Cain and Tyler Dellow, who might be two of the biggest offseason acquisitions that they make. And I know that that's overstated a lot. We say that a lot with front office people, but I mean, it shows that the Devils are really focusing more on analytics and focusing more on, those deeper cuts, the Billy Bean stats, as you will, of just a much different focus. It's more than the counting sets. It's more the goals and the assists. It's, the Corsi and the Fenwick and even things beyond that, like GAR and WAR and all those other things that, are probably a little bit too smart for guys like you and me and most of the fans out there, just because it's so deep and it's so intrusive. I could tell you what the general purpose of those stats are. Like, most of them are possession stats and most of them are turnover stats, and that's generally what they put out. And and chances, it's a lot about chances and how many chances you give up while you're on the ice and how many chances you get. But looking deeper into those, and kind of, especially during this time when it's the draft, because those are stats that you and me can't really get. I dug deep to find those stats when I was doing this mock draft and to kind of see, and it took me a couple of hours just to find the numbers behind these guys. And the numbers are so kind of, when you're looking at these other leagues like the WHL and the OHL and the QMJHL, it's hard to put on, because it's not a lot of game film that's out there. It's a lot of highlight film that's out there. So you're trying to put together what those stats say, compare it to what you see on the ice. But what you see on the ice is only the best of this guy. So it's kind of hard. But these guys, these analytics people can tell the scouts, hey, this is what I've read. Now you go look at it. Tell me if this is what translates on the ice. And that's where that's really going to come in handy. That's where this is going to be something that may be revolutionary for Shero and the Devils, and it might end up with, more of these 5th and 6th round picks making the NHL. And that's going to save the Devils a lot of money down the line, because, we see a lot of these teams in cap crunches, and the Devils might not have to do that because they're getting 3 and 4 players out of a draft while other teams are getting 1 or 2.
Yeah. And I just keep in mind, and the fans listening in right now and watching, our live feed, just remember one thing about Ray Shero. He is all analytics. He's got the modern mindset, but just remember the family pedigree that Ray Shero comes from, with his dad coaching the Flyers to 2 Stanley Cups, watching a team, as a kid, mold into, a championship team. I know it's the Flyers, but he's been around hockey for so long that I bet you he's got the analytics and the right people around him, but he's also got that hockey mind as well to make judgment calls. Should I go with the analytics or should I not? Should I use the analytics to back up my intuition about this one player, in the third, fourth, and fifth round? And just remember what makes a great GM. And you remember when it was the Devils and the Detroit Red Wings, mid 90s to, for about 10 to 15 years, it's the later rounds that counted. And what separated the Red Wings, they won the 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups, and they won the third one. The Devils had 3, and then they won another cup for the 4th cup after not winning it for so long. What separated was Pavel Datsyuk, these later, and Henrik Zetterberg. That's what made Ken Holland a legend. And I'm not knocking on Lou. Lou had some great picks in the late rounds, but in the end, if you want to talk about dynasties and you want to talk about teams, that gave, I think, the Red Wings the edge just based on cups, were those late round picks. And for a while there, David Conti, great scout. Some of these late round picks didn't really turn out, but they had a lot of good, unrestricted or not unrestricted, undrafted players that they did pick up, like John Madden. Or wasn't David Clarkson undrafted as well? I don't remember, but
I don't think he was he undrafted? I thought they drafted
and Rafalski
him,
and Rafalski. It wasn't Rafalski undrafted too. Yeah, I mean they find these gems that turn out to be.
Andy Green was undrafted, and he's had a great career. So you definitely, and he's a Lou guy. He goes back to Lou, who's the one who picked him up. So I know he's. Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, he's 36 years old now, and he's the captain of the team, and he definitely. You're definitely right. Like getting those late round guys and those undrafted guys, and making that work like that. That's what I think. That's why I have I'm still really high on Ray Shero, because he's getting those late round picks. A lot of people are kind of down because he so-called missed out on McLeod and Zaka, but he's hit on Jesper Bratt. It looks like he's hit on Jeremy Davies in the 7th round. Joey Anderson was a 3rd round pick. Like these guys that weren't, you'd obviously have to hit on those 1st round picks, but if you could hit on those 2nd, 3rd, and other picks, that would be a big deal. And you're right, David Clarkson wasn't drafted. I don't know why I thought he was drafted. That's on me.
Yeah,
you are correct on that.
Well, our super fan of the podcast, Let's Go Devils podcast, Jake Wakely says that Clarkson was undrafted. So if Jake Wakely says it, it's got to be true, right?
I think you're right. I think Jake Wakely knows all, and all a good night.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. All right, so let's go back to your blog on Pucks and Pitchforks, the 2019 NHL mock draft, which is the title of the State of the Fan address podcast tonight. So let's start now. You picked Jack Hughes. I mean, we've been talking about that for a while now. Over Capo Caco. He's a great player, but unfortunately for us, he's going to the New York Rangers. But he's the low upside, high floor player here. So, do you think there will be that Hughes Caco controversy? I think it's going to be ringing loud if Hughes has a very slow start to his career the first 2 years and Caco is ripping it up with 50-goal seasons. I mean, but it's you shouldn't play money morning quarterback on this one.
I mean, all I'm going to say, and these four players are very different players, but they're similar in their positions and in the controversy and kind of how this kind of went, is the Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine debate up against the Jack Hughes and Capo Kakko debate. And it was the same thing. It was funny. I think it's Mackenzie was looking at it in the same, somebody was looking at it in the same spectrum where every single person picked Austin Matthews to go number one in every mock draft from September to December to January to March. But then in the postseason mock draft, two people picked Laine. And this draft went the exact same way. Everybody had Hughes. And then in this latest mock draft, two people picked Kakko. And I could see it. And if you're a team that has Laine right now, I think you should be happy. Winnipeg doesn't seem happy, but maybe there's a different issue with that. But the issue is that I feel like Jack Hughes is going to go 50 points, 60 points, 75 points, 80 points, and then he's going to go 80 to 100 for the next 7 years, while Kakko might go 60 points, 100 points, 40 points, 80 points. And you kind of have to hope and pray that his good years are going to line up with the rest of your team's good years, and it comes out in the playoffs. And like I said, we saw it with Laine this year where, he had, I think it was 16 goals in November and didn't have more than 4 in a month after that, where you get these spurts of greatness where he's just, hotter than, anything, hotter than a kitchen stove in winter. But then you get times where he's as cold as Canada. I don't know. These are bad analogies, but where I'm trying to get here with it. It's just, you have to ride a roller coaster with Kakko. While Jack Hughes, he's going to come in night in, night out, and just perform. And maybe it's to 45 to 50 points in that first year. Maybe that's what you get in that first year. Maybe you're right. Maybe Kakko gets 70 and 35 of its goals. And, he's rolling with a Rangers team that's looking really good right now. And if Henrik Lundqvist kind of feels rejuvenated and he kind of, gets a little excited, maybe the Rangers are in a playoff picture. And, if the Devils don't make moves and they're not, and Jack Hughes is 15 points in December, there's going to be a lot of alarm sounding. But I'm not going to be one of those people who sound the alarm because A, it's his first year. B, we saw him take a couple games to get used to the IHF World Championships. And then in that last game, he won Player of the Game. So I think we just got to be patient with Hughes because he's going to be a great player as long as he stays healthy.
Well, since this is the state of the fan address, we might as well answer Jake Wakely's question in the Facebook Live group. Sam, can you talk about Kakko being your gut feeling as our pick? Now, offline, I was private messaging Jake. He was our guest, our super fan from Canada, the guest on the Let's Go Devils podcast, which can be heard every Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern. But I don't know, because either I'm a huge fan of the New Jersey Devils, but sometimes the negativity starts sinking in, and I think that's what happened with some of these analysts. But part of me is kind of like, can you imagine if Ray played us this entire time and he had his eyes on Kakko just to throw off the New York Rangers? And on top of that, on Twitter, Boomer Esiason, that hosts the morning show on WFAN, Boomer and Geo, he tweeted out a photo of his daughter. His daughter sent him a brand new New York Rangers jersey, and it was Kakko on it. Can you imagine if Ray gets up on the podium in Vancouver and he's like, well, first he'll, say, I'd like to thank the people of Vancouver for their hospitality. Da da da. I'd like to thank Gary Bettman and Bill Daly of the NHL. Da 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 da. And everybody's waiting. Everyone thinking it's Hughes, and he's like, the Devils select Capo Caco.
It's not gonna happen.
That would, I mean, being from the area, the tri-state area, and seeing what Dave Gettleman did with a 6th overall pick in the NFL draft, picking Daniel Jones, I'm starting to get a little shaky right now that some of these players are maybe not a sure thing. So,
yeah, but that's not the 1st overall pick. That's 6 overall. That's a GM who's, you got to remember, like, Gettleman's a little older. Gettleman's coming towards the end of his career. Like, I think Ray Shero wants to be here for the next decade at least. And if he gets fired here, he plans on getting another job somewhere else. Gettleman's in a different position. Gettleman's in a position where he wants to, be the guy who turns us around and that be his legacy and then kind of go off in the sunset. So I think it is a different position. They can take Kakko. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that everything we've seen is pointed to Hughes. I think Hughes is the better player to take. I think Hughes is a smarter decision. I think that when you look at just like their skill set side by side, the thing that Kakko does better is he's stronger. He's bigger right now. He's kind of thicker for that NHL. He's for the NHL grind. He's going to get used to that 82 game season. Actually, now that I say that, I don't know if that's even true because Hughes has played close to 82 games the past 2 seasons just with the United States national development team. So, these two and Hughes doesn't have to get used to the American ice as much. He's been playing it his entire life. A lot of these things that we see these overseas players having to deal with, Jack Hughes doesn't have to deal with. So. And he's just so fast. Like, he's going to walk in and he can get in a skate race with Miles Wood and Taylor Hall today. And it's competitive. And that's on top of having some of the sweetest hands, maybe the sweetest hands on the team. He might have better hands than Nico or Hall or anybody today because he has that kind of talent. He could pass with the best of the people coming into drafts for the past 10 years. He's got those sweet hands. He's got to work a little bit on his shot, especially his slap shot. I'd like to see a little more power behind that. Obviously, he's going to get that when he gets a little bit weight behind it. But with Kakko, there's a little bit of cockiness to his game. There's a little bit of swagger, but with swagger comes, overconfidence sometimes. Sometimes that confidence is great, and sometimes that confidence, he tries to make the bet. He tries to make too good of a move, and when the regular move would have scored him a goal. And he tries to make the flashy play over the smart play. And then with Hughes is probably one of the smartest NHL prospects I've seen come out ever. Connor McDavid had this coming in, and that's why Connor McDavid was the lockdown number one. I'm not comparing Hughes to McDavid, but I am comparing his intelligence and his hockey IQ and just knowing where to be on the ice and knowing what to do to the puck when you have the puck. So when you can take a guy like that, you take that guy. You just don't pass that up because it's going to haunt you. Even if Kakko becomes a Hall of Famer, I still think the Devils would regret not taking Hughes.
Okay, well said. Well said. And just to add in with Jack Hughes, I said this on the Let's Get Alls podcast before. I've seen video. Some of the limited video of him playing, and I compared it to Joe Sakic highlight videos in the NHL. Very similar player. I think Jack Hughes' mindset, his focus, it's a little bit like Sidney Crosby. All he lives, breathes hockey all the time. He's thinking hockey all the time. He's dedicated to hockey all the time. And one of the things that should be interesting to see that, I'm sure both players do not have any character issues is how do they stay focused? Kakko's in New York. He's in New York. He's in the spotlight. Jack Hughes is next door, but New Jersey doesn't get, the limited coverage, in the tri-state area. So he may be able to make some mistakes, along the way, and mature without being so much in the spotlight. You just never know. But let's move on to round 2 on your Pucks and Pitchforks article on Fansided, pucksandpitchforks.com. Round 2, you have Nolan Foote. So let me ask you, Nick, who is Nolan Foote?
Well, before I get into that, I just want to say I was on the fence with this pick, really on the fence, and I've gone back and forth. At one point, I had Tobias Bjornfort, and then I go back and forth to Nolan Foote, and then I go with Bjornfort, and then I go with Foote. And I'll tell you one thing: there's a wild card on this pick, on this number 34, that somebody's going to fall out of the first round, and we can't predict it. It's impossible to predict. So I just went with the guys that I felt like I knew were going to be there. So I went between Bjornfort, who's a defenseman out of Sweden. He's really, really good, but I couldn't figure out where his upside was. So I felt like he could max out as a second line defenseman, and that kind of worried me. So that's why I went with Nolan Foote. And Nolan Foote, much like the Hughes Kakko debate, I feel like could have a little bit of a lower floor. He was good this past season. He had 36 goals over 66 games while he was playing in the WHL for the Kelowna Rockets. And he jumped up. I really like that he jumped up. He had 13 goals in his first season in Kelowna when he was 17. Last year he had 36 goals, 63 points total. He stayed healthier the last season. So He's a really good player. He plays on the left wing. He's got a rocket of a shot. He just needs to learn how to take some of his skill sets and bring them into an every night atmosphere and bring them day in and day out. Because sometimes I don't know if it's a confidence issue. I don't know if it's where sometimes he doesn't trust what he's doing, or maybe sometimes he makes one too many passes, but he makes some of those mistakes, which is dropping him to the second round. And Nolan Foote, he's the son of Adam Foote and the cousin of Cal Foote, the Lightning defensive prospect. So he's got that famous name, and usually these guys with this famous name get a lot more hype and get pushed into that first round. And that happened to Nolan at parts during this season, but he's fallen back a little bit. And I think that he could still be a first round type talent. It's just that this draft is so deep that it pushed him to the second round to that 34th overall pick. And I think the Devils are getting kind of a steal here.
Yeah, and also as I'm looking through your blog, I forgot the Devils have 3 second round picks.
Yeah, it's not the one here.
Yeah, I mean, it should be interesting if they start to trade up, with some of these picks. But assuming that they are using all of them, don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name. Maxim Kajkovic. Is that?
I think that's it. I've heard it 3 different ways, so I'm not even going to try. But yeah, Maxim Kajkovic, I think is how it goes. This dude has all the talent in the world. Like, I'm really excited about this guy. He's been moving up draft boards, so I'm a little worried he might not still be available at 55, but I'm really hoping he is, because this guy, he there's times where he lights up the QMJHL. The problem is he's the only guy on his team. He's playing for the St. John Sea Dogs, and he's first year in there. He's playing top line minutes. He's taking on a role of controlling the offense, so his counting stats don't look so great. He only scored 22 goals, and he only had about 20, I think it was 27 assists, so it's only about 49 points. He doesn't have those counting stats that a lot of these players that you're taking in this position are, but he's similar to Peyton Krebs, and where Peyton Krebs, a guy that's being taken, he's being talked about in top 10, but he is dealing with injuries. But besides the point, Peyton Krebs is a guy that, he was the lone guy in a bad team. This is the same thing for Maxim Kajkovic. is that he is doing everything and trying to carry the load and trying to pull like what Taylor Hall pulled when he took the Devils to the playoffs. And eventually, that takes sometimes when you're on a really bad team, it brings down your statistics. So this guy can play right wing and left wing. He's very versatile. He's a little smaller. He's 5'11", so, I know the Devils have been running a little small, but, we're not talking about Brian Giunta here. So, he's average height, but, he's got skills to skate through defenses. He's super smart with the puck. He'll make great passes. He's very, very, very good at throwing the puck towards the net for a guy to poke check it into the net. You love that play. You love that play where they just kind of, it looks like they don't know what they're doing with the puck. They're just throwing it at the net, and it just hits the stick and goes in. He's amazing at that play. So I love this guy at 55.
Okay, and at 61, you have defenseman Marshall Warren play alongside with Cole Caulfield and Alex Turcotte. And you think you're right that he's a good defender with some amazing hands. So you think the Devils will select him? Is he a right-handed or a left-handed defenseman?
I got to double check that. But yeah, Marshall Warren, he from what I'm 90% sure he isn't right-handed, but he's the guy. When I was watching tape on this guy, he was throwing the puck with such ease to his teammates, and his zone entries were just. He's a left-handed defenseman who he could just handle the puck through traffic like you'd expect to see from a winger. And he was decent. He has a decent shot. His shot could get better, but his passes are on point. His zone entries are on point. His zone exits are on point. He handles the puck really well. He has decent vision. And he's going to Boston College next year, so you won't see him for 2 or 3 years, likely. So, I know a lot of teams don't usually take the guys going to college at this point because you got to wait for them. Unless it's somebody like Quinn Hughes that is going to be like a superstar, But Marshall Warren, I think, could be a really good pick, with that pick we got from the Marcus Johansson trade.
Okay, going to round 3, you have Jordan Spence, defenseman, and Nando Eggenberger. Tell me about these two kids.
Yeah, Jordan Spence is a guy who I'm a little worried about this pick, just a little bit, because he got ignored. He went undrafted in the first year of the QMJHL draft, which means he didn't play in the QMJHL at all in that first year. So this past year was his first year, and he had to make a lot of those mistakes that these guys usually make when they're 16 years old. He had to make them in his draft year. So I think that's why he fell to this point. I think that's why he's available at 70. But there's a lot to like about this kid's game. He scored 49 points in that first year while making those mistakes as a defenseman. He can move the puck. He could shoot the puck. He's really good on both ends. You want to see him do better at staying at home a little bit more, especially with, on this Devils team that already has Will Busher, that's getting Ty Smith. A lot of, Damon Severson's an offensive defenseman. We already have guys that play off that, do offense well. So you want him to kind of get better at the stay-at-home aspect, kind of keep everything in front of him. But he's really good at zone exits as well, which is something that the Devils have a lot of problems with. And then Nando Eggenberger is just a name I'd love to say, but obviously there's a lot more than that. He was actually eligible for the draft last year, and he went undrafted. So he went back home. He went and played in juniors for the first year of his career. Ended up scoring 25 goals for the Oshawa Generals. He played really well getting used to North American ice. There was a lot he had to get used to because he's an overseas player. Teams couldn't sign him out of the draft, so he had to play a year in North America. He comes back. Maybe this is a little high for him, but I think he's definitely going to be available here in the 80 pick. And I think that he could be a really good player in a couple of years. He still needs some development, but a lot of these guys you take at the end of the third round, that's what you're getting. And you're hoping in 2 years, 2 or 3 years, you get an NHL player.
Yeah, I like his name too. I mean, Well, we got to get our good friend Kevin Clark to give us a preview if the Devils do draft him. Goal scored by number, I don't know, 34. Ooh. Nando Eggenberger, and then the crowd's going nuts. And then if he scores a hat trick, if he has a hat trick, we all have our eggs in the crowd, and we just throw it out on the ice. All right.
I'm sure the cleanup staff is going to love this.
Oh, I know. We bring the eggs to the game. All right, so let's round out the draft 4 through 7. Wow. I don't know how these broadcasters do it, but these names are Yaroslav Likacha. Yeah. Why don't you talk about it?
I think it's Yaroslav Likachev.
Okay.
You got to put a little Russian behind that. Little okay. That Russian accent on it. It's like, spinning your R's.
Yep.
But I love this guy. I think that this could be this, I'm always a little gun shy after the Nikita Papagayev disaster that it's been so far. Because I thought that I love that guy too. And I thought he was going to be great. And everybody was mishandling his development until Ray was like, "You're just coming to the AHL and I'm going to watch you over and we're going to make this work." But this kid, he came over to the QMJHL from Russia, played with the Gatineau Olympiques, didn't have a good season. He didn't have a good season at all. His count numbers were bad. He scored 2 goals in the first game, and then I think he went like 12 or 13 games without a point. He ended the season with 12 goals, but he ended the season really well. He kind of played a lot better over the last 15 to 20 games, and that's what I want to see. I want to see growth out of my 4th round pick. Even though we're picking early and it's a top 100 pick, this is the guy that Ray could bring in, can be like, "Hey, this is what I expect of you. This is the road I need you to take for you to be a great player." And I think this kid, he has all the upside in the world. People had him in the 1st round last year. When people were looking way ahead at drafts, and this guy's fallen to the 4th round. And I think this guy could be really good. This was one I don't love this pick, but I think that the Devils are going to make it. Is Tag Bertuzzi. The name. It's Todd's father. His cousin is Tyler Bertuzzi. But he was the 2nd overall pick in the OHL draft by Gulf. But Gulf didn't really have a spot for him. So they ended up trading him to Hamilton. He gets hurt in his first game with Hamilton, misses the rest of the season. He's been hurt for the last 2 years. And when he's not hurt, his production isn't as good as we expected. So, that's why he's fallen here. He might fall here, and if people don't take him in the 5th round, it's possible he could fall out of the draft completely. But obviously, I'm taking him here because I think that the Devils are going to want a guy like this in the 5th round who he's 100% upside. This is a guy who maybe one day he has 1st round. He had 1st round talent. That's why he went 2nd overall in his juniors draft. Those guys are supposed to go in the 1st or 2nd round. The only guy who taken before him was Ryan Suzuki, who's likely going to go in the 1st round this year. So I think that this kid, he's missing something. And people who get paid a lot more than me are the people who are trying to figure that out. It's just when you see him on the ice, he's just, even when he scored points, it's just lackadaisical. So I think that, there's just a lot. There's something that can be done with that. And then this guy like Matt Guzda, the goalie out of Owen Sound, super smart player. He won awards out of high school for being that smart. So, Ray Shero's got to take a goalie in every draft. So Matt Guzda is going to be I think he's going to be the goalie's 6th round pick. I think he has upside. I think he can make the NHL one day with the right road, if he takes the right road. So I think that he could be a nice, interesting pick. And then in the 7th round, I have Taro Gents. Yeah. So I took that one for you, Sam. You don't have to pronounce that name. But, this is a really interesting prospect. He's German. There's only 8 other Germans in the NHL right now. So I think, you're swinging for the fences in the 7th round, but he had a much better season for the Sherbrooke Phoenix out of the QMJHL this season. Scored 42 points. He's got a lot of good qualities. He's got great vision. He uses his power correctly. He's got power behind the shot and uses power on the boards. He wins board battles. He get the puck where it needs to be. And, the Devils need a guy who can just get in there and just hard-nose it and be a little pit bull in there. And, so I think that's a good, interesting 7th round. I know that was a lot of information to throw at you at once, Sam, but I figured I'd throw those late-round picks all at once.
I'll tell you what, for the folks that are listening or watching us right now, go to pucksandpitchforks.com. You'll find Nick's mock draft there. You'll find some pretty good blogs from Vinny, from Joe, from Mike, and the crew at Pucks and Pitchforks, powered by Fansided. Look, Nick, I got to tell you, if all of your picks actually come true, you will have a front row seat. And I will provide this once it happens. A front row seat to the Let's Go Devils podcast private jet, $35 million private jet that we're raising money for. If you go to any of our social media sites, on Facebook.com / or is it backslash? Is it forward slash? Backslash? Doesn't matter.
I think it's
/ Let's Go Devils podcast. You go to our store, you can buy a t-shirt or whatever. Proceeds goes towards our $35 million jet. And Nick, if you get every one of these picks correct on your Pucks and Pitchforks blog, you will have a front seat, and I will also have the stewardess serve you the beer of your choice.
Listen, if I get all of these right, that jet better be taking me to the moon, because you're never going to get me down if I'm right about all of these.
I mean, can you imagine? Or you know what it could mean if you're right? Ray Shero is listening to this podcast, and he's taking it very, very, very seriously.
Hey, listen, he's trying to get it. He's trying to get as much information from as many sources as possible. I'm glad he doesn't listen to me, and I'm sure everybody out there on Twitter would say the same thing. But I have some bold ideas. I will say that I try to keep it bold. I try to keep it interesting. I try to keep the conversation going. And I think that these picks, I've been looking at it throughout the season, just kind of curiously. But the past couple of nights before that, I kind of look at it. I'd make a list. I'd sleep on the list. I'd go back to the list, and I'd research those players a little harder. I switched a couple players out, and then I slept on it again, and then I wrote it, and then that's what you got. You got a couple paragraphs on each guy, so you kind of get to know them a little bit better. But definitely do your research.
Yeah, and the draft is coming up this Friday, and here at the Let's Go Devils podcast. Now we're a network because we got you on board, Nick. We're going to do a double header special on Friday. The Let's Go Devils podcast, probably around 11 a.m. Eastern, with myself, Shorts Guy, and Beer Baron. We're going to get up early in the morning, and we're going to do NHL pre-game draft podcast. Any final picks, concerns, someone's stock just went high in the last 2 seconds. We'll be talking about all about that. And after the Devils make their pick, the State of the Fan address where you're watching or listening right now, it's also streaming live on letsgodevils.com. We will go live after the Devils select their first pick, and we want your reaction, because that's what we call this, the State of the Fan address. right? We want your reaction.
I want to talk to all the Devils fans that night. I want to hear what everybody has to say. I want to know if, and we'll know if they're going to make trades too. We'll know if Ray Shero is making moves on the first day of the draft. So, I want to take the pulse of the fan that night. That's what I want to know. We usually do the state of the fan, but I want to know the pulse of the fan on draft night.
All right, so some people are chiming in on Facebook Live. I'll just show my phone right now. David Holiday says, I hope Shero has been listening to us, Nick. Thank you very much. Mike Lucci writes, he deserves a 5-course dinner if he's right about all these draft picks. Cheryl Miller is asking, will you guys be at the Prudential Center Friday? Well, Cheryl, Shorts Guy, we have sent Shorts Guy on assignment down at the Devils NHL draft party. Shorts Guy will probably chime in sometime during the State of the Fan address. We decided, originally we were thinking about going there, and I think it came to a point where it's like, we don't want to be the big noise at the draft day party. I mean, so we decided to hold back a little bit. We'll send Shorts Guy there. Nick Villano and I will be doing the State of the Fan address, wanting your reaction. So to answer your question, Shorts Guy will be there. Nick and I will be in our respective studios in Florida and somewhere in beautiful New Jersey. And but say hi to Shorts Guy. And I got him a ticket in. He's all happy. Beer Baron has some I don't know. Yeah, he may have a scheduling conflict. We're not sure, but Beer Baron may show up. I don't know. You guys can hit him up on Twitter. The Beer Baron at the Beer Baron. But yeah, so just to answer your question now, one day we will do several live events. We have things in the works for season 3 for the Let's Go Devils podcast. But for right now, we just hooked up with Pucks and Pitchforks. Hey, this is a great podcast. This is a great podcast. I enjoyed it. Rick. Yeah. So is it raining down in Florida?
Of course. It rains every day.
Okay. Yeah, it was raining today in beautiful New Jersey, part of the day. All right. Any last thoughts on the mock draft?
Yeah, no, I mean, just, we do have probably 6 or 7 more pieces coming out before the draft. So make sure to go to Pucks and Pitchforks. Make sure to follow us on at Pitchforks Puck on Twitter, and, Pucks and Pitchforks on Facebook. You could catch us, join our conversations. We love talking to the fans. Sam, I know you love talking to the fans on here. So we want to get you guys into it, get you guys motivated. And if you are going to the draft party, just remember that, our podcast, our draft reactions podcast is going to go on iTunes. So you should probably listen to that when you come home and, laugh at our reactions or laugh at the crazy predictions that I try to make during the draft.
Yeah, and also you can find our recordings right after the podcast. I'll have to cut it, upload as quickly as possible. So people have asked me, how long does it take for it to go live on iTunes and Google Play and all that? As soon as I get done with the podcast, I cut the audio, maybe a couple edits here and there. Usually not, because I'm lazy. And I upload, and it's on iTunes. It's on iHeartRadio, iHeart.com, iHeart app, Spotify. We're on Let'sGoDevils.com. You can find us on our social media pages. I heard that a lot of people go to our YouTube channel and actually play it from there while they're at work. So it's pretty cool if they didn't catch the podcast. And I've also found that people are getting notifications that way as well as we build our subscribership to the Let's Go Devils channel on YouTube. But yeah, we want to thank all the listeners, viewers of the State of the Fan podcast. State of Fan addressed podcast on the Let's Go Devils podcast. We got to figure out all the all the plugging sooner or later.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, we're playing on a North American podcast ring, so we're just getting used to the dimensions.
Yep. But you want to close out? Do you have anything you want last thing to say, Nick?
Nope. We're excited to do this. We're probably going to do this a lot more often, as me and Sam has discussed. So expect to see a lot more of this face.
Yes.
But I really want to thank all the Devils fans out there that listened. And catch us on Friday. Let's go Devils.
Yeah, let's go Devils. And as what I guess Ray Shero would say. Till next time, let's go Devils.